Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 14. Hope I did that right. 14? I don't know. In the 68 Camaro rebuild known as basket case. Now, you've probably seen the other videos. If you've been watching my series on this, you already know that I started on this car a long time ago, probably 8 years ago. And then I had to set it aside because I was doing other things. And I recently got it back into the garage, and I'm trying to replace the bulk of the sheet metal on this car. So in previous videos, I've replaced the rocker panel on the passenger side, the outer wheelhouse. I've replaced the whole side of the driver's side of the car, and all of that is welded in and it's solid. And now I'm moving on to test fitting the sheet metal. So you probably saw in the time lapse that I've shown, I did some time lapse where I was doing the welding and just finishing up the welds that needed to happen. There's still going to be a lot of grinding that needs to take place because I don't like to leave just big lumpy welds, you know. I want to try to smooth those down as much as I can. So that's going to have to take place. I'm in the middle now of test fitting quarter panels again, tail panel again, and now I can finally test fit the deck filler panel. I mentioned that in a previous video that I had problems getting it in because of some bracing that I had put in. Now that the package shelf is welded in and that piece has been removed, I can now set that piece in. So let me show you what I'm dealing with and what's going to have to happen to make everything fit. Alright, so again, as I mentioned, I've replaced the outer rocker panel on this side, the outer wheelhouse, the whole side of that car, which is now fully welded in all areas. So that's taken care of, and the package tray is welded in as well. Now there's some critical things that need to line up whenever you start looking at these quarter panels. Obviously, I put in the wheelhouse. I have a really good mating of the wheelhouse, or the wheel opening, and the wheelhouse itself. Very happy with that. Up here, I detailed it in some work I did on the other side. When I was mocking things up, I had to actually cut this quarter, or well, the other quarter, and change this angle a little so the rain gutter fits, because that rain gutter, it has to fit and be welded on to the roof structure, and then the roof will sit inside of that. So all of this has to be carefully aligned as we move along. Now, this flange up here, it mates together really nice on both sides. You can see it fits very well. And now I have the deck filler panel in. I mentioned that previously. There are some issues with that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to point out again that these two quarter panels are from different manufacturers. Variety of reasons. This one has less of a crisp bump stop here, some more dimples or ripples in this section. And then you come up here, this is seems like a shorter drop right in this area. You can see it's a little taller over here, and then it gets thin in this area. Come over to this quarter. This one's thicker, more consistent. The lines are better. The bump stop is better, and I'm happier with this quarter panel. I also have to deal with making the tail panel fit, and I've talked about it before. The flanges here need to be massaged so that I can bend these back and get this in better. Now, one of the other big things that I found different in these quarter panels, if you look at the bottom here, and again, I don't know who made these. This one, it's kind of rounded off, and then has the drop flange that mates to the inner panel. And you can just see it's really just kind of round. Come over here to the driver's side. This one is a lot more flat, a lot more squared off. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this will probably never get noticed. I'm just pointing this out because that's what I do. Also, the lines over here are crisper where the bumper overlaps, and on this side it's a bit more rounded. So I'm going to say this quarter panel on the right side would be the cheaper version, and you know, it is what it is. Now, I don't want to go out and buy new quarter panels. I really don't. And I hope I don't have to get to that point, because I like to use what I have and make good use of this material. But as I'm doing this, I've got to make the quarter panel fit the opening, and I can line up on the holes that are inside here, get that lined up, massage these angles or these curves again. And here's what I was talking about with the deck filler panel. I talked about it in the previous video. This angle is wrong. This should be more like a 90 degree, and you can see that it's pushing away at the bottom, which makes the quarter panels want to stay away from each other. Same way over here, you can see it more pronounced. There's the angle. So I'm going to have to modify this. What I may end up doing, I don't just want to take a hammer and knock this back, because I have a corner right here. And so if you start hitting on that, it may change your peak on this quarter. Same way, or this corner I should say. And same way up here. You start just hitting that, and it's going to change how this is shaped. So I will probably cut this in these the long length of the corner, bend this back in place, tack it back together, and move on from there. So that's where I'm at right now. Otherwise, things are coming along pretty good. Here you can see where I trimmed down this piece, and now it fits the angle here much better. So otherwise, it fits the opening like it should, and it fits the wheelhouse even better on this side than it does on the other side. One other thing that I'm finding is the overlap here. This flange, you can't see the inner flange because it's actually mated dead on. It's dead on. But on this side, it doesn't want to mate the same way. So I'm going to have to look into that a little more. The thing is, I can't make this just go over there, because it has to interact with the seam for the tail panel. So this is more critical, this finish, than it is getting this tucked all the way in. I also noted that when I was pushing this in, it was actually hitting right here on the quarter on this drop-off piece. So these are some of the things you have to look at whenever you're trying to fit up this aftermarket sheet metal. It's just the way it is, but I'll move forward and get it figured out, and probably show you some detail work on that deck filler. Okay, so as I get ready to start on this, I just want to tell you that most of this will probably be in a time-lapse format. I've said it before, whenever I do a project like this and I come up with issues, you know, based like the seam and these different seams and stuff like that, what I normally do is, as I'm going to bed, I think about these things. And so as I was thinking about this last night during sleep time, I came to the conclusion that this deck filler panel, as it fights with the movement of the quarter, and you can even see here the overlap is not correct, but as it fights with that movement, it also limits or restricts the movement here. So I have to, in my opinion, get the tail panel in the right location, get the quarter to fit the tail panel the right way, and then work on the deck filler panel. Because if I were to fix this right now and try to bring the quarters in to make it match, let's say there's some variance in the width or shape, then back here I will be compressing the quarter panels, and it could lead to a problem with this angle. So ideally, I think I'll correct anything I can with the tail panel and then work the deck filler. What I'm noticing here is this flange is longer than the flange on the other side, and as a comparison, you can look at the width of the tail panel piece, and you can see this is way too long. Part of the problem is, because this metal is so long, it's hard to bend. And also, the way these two quarter panels are shaped, the other quarter panel actually kind of rolls in right here. This one you can't do that because the metal is too strong. So I'm going to trim off some of this metal, make some relief cuts, and that's going to let this metal move in that direction and also be able to flatten this out. So this is where you have to keep test fitting everything. So this actually looks pretty decent, but now what I'm seeing, like this piece of metal right here, I put a mark on it. This is hitting this part of the tail panel. So either I cut off some here, which I think I've already done actually, or I remove some metal here to help alleviate that. And then if you'll notice, this corner isn't really a corner, it's kind of just folded over together. If we compare that to the other quarter panel, this is also folded over, but it is a true corner. So little things to look at. So that was just a little bit of manipulation, and now it fits a lot better than it did before. So it's just identifying those little areas that cause conflict and finding a way to move some metal. There's still a gap there, but I'm not done yet. I still need to address how this corner up here isn't sharp enough. On this side, it is a much sharper corner, so I'm going to have to get a bar and try to create a sharper edge. Now some of this can be addressed with body filler. There's really no way around that because the panel is not as crisp as it could or should be, but I'm much happier with how it's fitting the tail panel at this point. So after a little more manipulation, this is what I have. Pretty consistent gap all the way around. This will get seam sealer eventually anyway. You know, that's how that's made. In this area right here, I do have the tail panel protruding just a little, so I have to massage out this section on the quarter. I wish these lines were crisper, but I just can't do anything about it. And the overlap is good up here at the top. And the only other thing I need to worry about is a little bit of a pinch right here, because when I go to push this up at the bottom, it's want to interfere just a little right there. So I'll massage that over a little, and I'm pretty happy with how this side is looking. Alright, so I'm making progress, and I'm pretty happy with how the tail or the quarter panels fit to the tail panel at this point. If you look across as well, you can see that the tail panel and the deck filler panel are pretty much on plane with each other, which is a good sign. Now, what I have done on this side, I massaged this corner. This actually fit pretty well, but this drop off did not line up as it should, so I kind of rebent that a little. And I also put in the rain gutter piece, and now you can see how much material is actually lacking from the edge of the quarter where it's supposed to meet this channel. Up here it's lined up okay. Come over here, and then it's a whole nother story. This isn't even close. Look at that drop. Something's way off on this quarter panel. Now, you can look at a lot of things. You maybe could take some measurements from this edge to this hump, or from this edge, into this corner somewhere to try to get an idea. But this side, surprisingly, this quarter is I would say the worst of the two, but this looks really good. So, I'm going to have to do some modifications here. And I have to verify my radius, so I may make a cardboard template. I can use the channel that I have, but it's really hard to fit that in there with the constraint that this is in right now. Another thing, as I come up here, as I mentioned with the deck filler panel, you can see right now it's not sitting inside of the quarter, and on this side it is actually hitting up here on the inside of this quarter, and I'm a little concerned with the drop from here to here where the deck lid lines up. Now, the reason I'm concerned, this is already making contact back here, and it needs to go this way. It needs to do that as well on this side. It is kind of, if it dropped back into that section, that would be one thing, but then that's going to create a bigger drop here. So this panel is going to probably take some more work. Here's another thing. I have the old glass for the car, and we all know that this side of the car has been replaced, and the inner structure for this side is where it was, or where it should be. Now, you remember I fitted the front glass to make sure everything lined up. In the same way here, I have a pretty good sized gap where the glass should be meeting this. I also have a bit of a gap up here, but there is a saving grace. None of this stuff is welded in yet. And what I think I can do ultimately is I'll put a strap around both of these top panels here and ratchet it together and collapse this gap that is on both sides, and that's going to help a lot, because I didn't really have a reference. If you remember, none of this stuff was up here. So I did at one point have a line out here, and you can see where there's a rust witness mark. So this piece should be this direction, or if we consider that the inner structure should go that direction. So more ciphering, more figuring. I am going to go get a strap and just try that real quick and show you what it looks like. I do stuff like this, and I think about like the movie Vacation, right? Chevy Chase is going to get the family truckster, and the guy says, "You think you hate it now? Wait till you drive it." That's the way I'm feeling right now about this deck filler panel. You think you hate it now? Yeah, that even made it fit tighter. So I'm still going to try to set the glass in place. I know this is kind of arbitrary at this point. That helps. It helps. And it's really hard to judge some of this because without the deck filler panel fitting in place like it should, I do not have a proper setting up and down, let's say. I can manipulate this around and make it fit much better, but then this has to move around as well, and that's just not going to happen until I really get serious about modifying these sides. So So I'll give you a closer look. You can see that I'm making contact up here on the inner flange for the quarter, and of course this does not fit well. On this side, this is making contact, and of course this is not quite right either. So up here the quarter panel is pulled away a little bit from the inner structure, but that's just a matter of getting it down when it's time to clamp it in place. And the glass over here, this is pretty close, but again, with this sitting crooked, it's not helping the cause for the glass, because, well, this quarter has to slide in as well, but it's got a gap up here at the top. But again, this will shift and that'll shift the glass. So it's all part of it. It's all part of it, making sure everything is going to line up. But yeah, I'm going to have to sit back and think about this just a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to show you something. I was talking about where this hump is in this quarter, and if I measured from the edge, let's say, of the tail panel to the hump high point, it's about 1.5 inches. Let's just kind of say 1.5 inches. I come over to this side, measure from the tail panel, and this side, that hump is like 1 inch and almost 7/8 of it. Yeah, almost 1 inch and 7/8. So that tells me for sure that that is in the wrong spot. So this may take some cutting and manipulating and reshaping. So I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to sit back and figure out what I'm gonna do with this part. Otherwise, I have the quarter lined up, gaps are good. I'm very happy with how this looks. Both sides are fitting nice. As you can see, this side, I don't have any clamps up here at all, but I do have clamps inside holding the flanges on both sides. So again, looking pretty good. Okay, I have more work to do. I was hoping that I could get all of these pieces fitted together this week, and it just didn't happen. Obviously, there's more involved with getting the deck filler panel to fit correctly. Now that I have the tail panel in place, even though I'm going to have to do some modifications over here on the driver's side to get the little bump in the right place and get the channel in the right place, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. That's the way it is. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. These Camaros back in the day, yeah, they were building many of them a day. But remember, those parts were made to fit the cars, or fit much better than what we have right now. I, again, don't know who makes these panels. I think this one, the tail panel actually says Restoration World APC. It seemed like a pretty good panel. I know that quarter panel on the passenger side, it does have written in grease pencil NPD. This one has some sort of label in it, but I don't know what it says anymore. Obviously there are differences between the two, as I pointed out. But I think once I get that deck filler in place and I'm comfortable with how the glass is going to fit and all that sort of thing, then I can obviously drive on from there. But that'll have to be the end of this video. There's just too much involved right now to try to continue to making a super long video. So there will be more on this coming very soon. But I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing. If you would, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this video. And until next time, Take care of yourselves. See ya. On a side note, I'm probably going to try to get the Mustang out today, take it to a local cruise-in. I did get the wipers on. I didn't realize I'd gotten these new arms, and I thought I did not have the blades. But I looked in the trunk, lo and behold, I had the blades. So those are now installed, and I am charging the battery. Apparently, I had the battery disconnected, but it's still drained down for some reason. So I need to get that charged up and maybe go for a ride later.